It started out when I was 18 years old. I'm 25 now. On my 18th birthday, while I was taking a walk with my parents, I saw the man on the street for the first time. My parents had stopped to exchange gossip with an elderly couple, and as I looked on ahead, I saw him. He looked like someone that slept on park benches and probably hadn't had anything going his way for most of his life. He was holding out an ice cream cone, offering it to me. I grew up in the height of the stranger danger ad campaigns, and naturally they had become a part of my mental procedure in dealing with these situations. I firmly shook my head no, and the hand with the ice cream withdrew. If that had been the end of it, then I wouldn't be writing this story. I would have just dismissed it as a stranger and unusual encounter, the likes of which happen to random people all the time. But the next day, he was back, again holding an ice cream and looking as shabby as ever. And the next day, and the next, and the next. Each day I softly mumbled and complained about it to my parents, but make no mistake, every time I looked out into the street, he would be there, staring back at me, holding out an ice cream almost like a peace offering, day after day, every day. This daily routine went on for close to a decade. He was there wherever we went. We took a vacation to Japan and he showed up outside our hotel. We took a trip to Aunt Eva's cabin. He was standing among the trees in the forest. Wherever we went, he followed us, always with an ice cream to offer. It took me 3 years to realize that nobody else could see him. I opened my door that morning to see a fresh batch of snow with some very fresh footprints. As far as I could tell, the footprints came all the way to our front door and then turned around and walked away. I tried pointing that out to my friend, but she just looked at the snow, back at me, back at the snow, and told me there was nothing there. I was just seeing things. I pointed to the man himself standing behind our mailbox, but again, nothing. Just standing there holding a fresh ice cream cone. So the others can't see him. I can. Over the next few years, I tried every method possible to get rid of him. I spoke to witch doctors, I spoke to spiritualists, babas, yogis, even philosophers. Nothing. I'm 25 years old now. I decided the only way to get rid of him was to give him what he'd been offering for 7 years. Take the ice cream. So I did. I walked directly up to him and took the ice cream from him. Mistake. Big mistake. I shouldn't have done that. Instantly I felt my arm grow colder and colder until it felt like it was going to shatter into pieces. I felt the world around me start to fade and started experiencing intense visions. I felt my consciousness contracting, if that even makes any sense, and I felt myself fading from the world. It took me a second to realize I was becoming like him. I was disappearing from the world. I slapped him in the face with my other hand, an action that seemed so impossible, I think it actually startled him. My other arm felt warmer for just a second, just long enough for me to drop the ice cream and run. That was last month. Ever since then, I've started seeing the man again, but worse. I've started seeing all his friends. Everywhere I go, wherever I look, there's a pale, dull-eyed ghost looking at me, offering me an ice cream. It was 1 a.m. It was raining outside and all I could hear was the heavy drumming of the rain on the roof. The occasional lightning strike was the only thing that interrupted the rain. I was sitting in my bedroom watching literally anything I could find on YouTube. I was pretty sleepy and decided to watch one last video. I've been repeating this one last video pattern for the past hour and just continued watching more stuff. Suddenly the video I was watching just abruptly ended and I was looking at a black screen. I saw the yellow bar at the bottom and realized that an ad was loading up. As quickly as the black screen had appeared, it just disappeared and the ad started playing. It was one of those heavily edited face cream advertisements, except it was beyond photoshopped. The skin was literally smooth as glass. It was weirdly unnerving. The face looked like a plastic doll. Before I had to watch any more of that weird ad, my laptop crashed. It froze on the close-up of a literal plastic face, and then the screen went black. I closed the lid of my laptop a little too aggressively and set it down on my bedside table. Enough YouTube for today. I rolled around a bit in bed thinking about the ad and cringing internally. For a while I laid awake contemplating my life choices until my thoughts got mixed up and sleep took over. In the morning I woke up covered in a cold sweat. I was scared and my heart was racing. I had woken up from a nightmare, but I couldn't remember it at all. Vague memories of the nightmare slowly faded away from my memory, and I struggled to recall anything except for one thing: faceless people. I got out of bed and started to get ready for work. That extinguished any memory I had of my nightmare, and I continued on with my daily routine. I was a bit tired from not getting adequate sleep, and I could feel a bad headache setting in. I got out of my house and started driving to the nearest 7-Eleven to grab myself some coffee and maybe a donut. I stopped at a red light signal at an intersection. The cars in front of me started to turn right. I was switching between looking at the traffic signals and the cars ahead of me when I caught something. Literally every driver of the cars ahead of me were faceless. They had absolutely no facial features, just eyes, 2 little holes for nostrils, and an opening for a toothless mouth. Their skin was just smooth like the ad I'd seen last night. I was frozen in place when the car behind me blared its horn and I instinctively looked up at the traffic lights. The light was green and I quickly accelerated and turned to my right. After a bit, I pulled over into a 7-Eleven. I could not process what I had just seen. Was I just tired and seeing things? I rubbed my eyes as if that would fix the problem and got out of the car to get myself some coffee. I wasn't going to let some hallucination just ruin my day. It was probably just a combination of the sun shining right into my eyes and my tired mind. I pushed it all to the back of my head and just walked into the store. When I walked in, the first person that my eyes fell on was the cashier. He had no facial features, like someone erased everything. He had 2 openings for eyes. By openings, I mean imagine cutting out eyes on a skin-colored paper and then looking at someone looking through them. That's exactly how it looked like. His nose, again, was just 2 small openings. His mouth was the worst. It was a gaping hole in his face. The mouth was slightly open in a smile, and it was reddish dark inside, like it was filled with blood or something. His skin was as smooth as plastic. The cashier looked at me, and my scream caught in my throat. A whimper came out of my mouth, and I stumbled backwards and fell. My head bounced on the marble floor, and dull pain echoed through my head. I lifted my head and saw the cashier rushing over towards me. I crawled backwards as my eyes started tearing up from the pain. My vision got blurry when I struggled to my feet and started running out. My legs felt rubbery and unstable. I tripped a couple of times before I got into my car and slammed the door shut. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't even put my keys in the ignition. The cashier stared at me from inside the store, his flat, featureless face pressed against the glass. I was literally hyperventilating. I drove back home and nearly crashed my car twice. I jumped every time I saw a driver inside a car. They all had the same featureless face. I started crying uncontrollably when I came home. I parked my car and started running up the driveway to my front door. My neighbor who was watering his garden looked up at me and he was faceless as well. It took me a long time to get my keys in the keyhole because of my shaking hands. My hands were so sweaty I couldn't get a grip on the keys. My neighbor had no mercy and he continued staring at me. As soon as I got up to my house, I ran up to my bedroom and locked the door. I collapsed on my bed and started having a panic attack. Some low chanting outside my house interrupted me while I was breaking down. I rushed over to my window and saw hundreds of them circled around my house. They were all staring at me and saying something. I strained my ears to listen to what they were saying. Buy our face cream for beautiful, smooth skin. They are coming closer and closer. I can hear them knocking on my door now. Please, help me.